Everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So here's another Q&A video. First of all, thank you so much for posting all of your questions. If you do want to take part in these Q&As, definitely go and join the Discord. The server name is Appetite for the Dead. Link should be in the description of this video, but yeah, let's get into the very first question here. So Q&A. Do you think we will ever see characters from Fear appear in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon or Dead City? I do think that, well, I mean, I don't know about Daryl Dixon. I think that that show definitely, like, I mean, obviously anything is possible. Like, if they really wanted to do anything like that, like, they could. But I just don't see anything like that happening because it's a little unrealistic. But for Dead City, it just makes too much sense, I think. Like, honestly, it's one of those things that if they don't do it by the time Dead City ends, like, at least in terms of, like, Dwight and Sherry being on that show, because they went back to the sanctuary. We saw all the connections, you know, from Dead City to the All Out War arc, and I think it would be, honestly, insane to not have Dwight on that show in some way. Like, there's a lot of stories that you can do there, so I do think that eventually we will get that. It would be a really, like, honestly, a missed opportunity to, like, never, ever, you know, do that ever, so I hope that eventually we do get that. Like, I'm not expecting it for season 2, because I think we do have to, like, build up to a story like that, but for like a season 3 or maybe 4, somewhere around there, I think that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you know, it'd be nice if like Dead City was basically All Out War Part 3 in that sense, and maybe it ends after 5 or 6 seasons and Dwight is a part of the show for the last 3 seasons, and like maybe he dies in the end, or like I don't know how the story would, you know, I guess go, but I think that, yeah, definitely having Dwight and Sherry a part of the show, it should happen, and I do think we will get it. I just don't know if it's going to be like in season 3 or like later. I don't think season 2 for sure. I think it'll be definitely much later. So Q&A. Do you think that The Walking Dead Dead City is attempting to redo or create another version of All Out War, since the All Out War arc in season 8 was poorly received? It's funny because I was just talking about that. So, I mean, I don't know if they're trying to intentionally do that. I think that the showrunner, Eli Journe, is actually really interested in that arc overall, because I know that when he was talking about a lot of the story aspects of, you know, Maggie and Negan's dynamic, that was something that came up quite a bit, was a lot of, you know, what happened there with Glenn's death and a lot of that. And obviously there's a lot of connections with the Croat and all that to that arc in that time. So I think it's more of, you know, he's very interested in that arc specifically. So that's why we're seeing a lot of connections there. And I think that, honestly, that's smart to do. Like, instead of creating something else that would be completely new, like, you could do that too, because they are. But I don't know, I do like what they're doing with Dead City in terms of that. I think that it's definitely very smart, because a lot of people like that arc. Like, the All Out War arc, honestly, was a time that obviously a lot of people stopped watching, but a lot of people really do like that arc. And I think that, you know, to connect things back to that time, and also just the way they're doing it too, I really like how it just makes sense. And also, if you're just looking at characters like Maggie and Negan, like those characters specifically, you know, there was a lot going on around that time, so it makes sense to me. I don't think that they're trying to like make it better or anything like that. I just think that it just kind of makes sense to tell a story from, you know, things that sort of relate back to that time period, because obviously a lot of stuff happened then, right? So Q&A, if Hershel Jr and Rick ever met, what dynamic do you think they would have? Do you think Hershel Jr would show a bit of resentment towards him for his decision to keep Negan alive? That's actually pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know if it would be specific to, you know, Rick exactly. I feel like some of that might actually happen maybe even in Dead City, where we do learn a lot of that, you know, with Maggie, but I could see Maggie just being like, well, it wasn't really my decision, you know, we had to follow Rick. The Hilltop had all of this, and Alexandria decided to do this, and you know, there was a lot of issues, this and that. But I think the most important thing, and I think this is where they're going eventually with Hershel, which is, you know, I think that he's definitely going to learn a lot about, you know, who Glenn was, because he doesn't know a lot about his father right now. And Hershel Jr., I think for season 2 and probably for season 3, and we'll see how long this arc goes on for, but I think he's going to be pretty much the exact opposite of his father. I think that he's going to be very, very angry. I mean, they've already been sort of teasing like this villain arc almost, right? Or they're saying he's going to have a darker story. So I'm assuming he's going to go down, you know, that route eventually. And I think that it would be really interesting to see if at some point, you know, he learns a lot more about his father and the type of person he was, and, you know, what he stood for, and just a lot of that. And I could see how that could maybe change him quite a bit. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, honestly, Glenn is one of those characters, and it's really interesting because I remember a lot of the talk back then of, you know, saying that like this moment is going to be a really big moment. And it's funny how a lot of that stuff that happens, to Glenn back then, like it's still affecting the story to this day. And I could just see how that would be a really big part of the story for season 2 and 3. And honestly, it's kind of insane that a story like this can even happen. But that's kind of why I really honestly want like more comic story, because there's so much story to tell here. Like you can really go on forever with a lot of the characters' stories. And I'm not happy with how the comics ended because of, like the Commonwealth was just kind of underwhelming. Like I think from the Rick aspect and some other aspects of the story, it made a lot of sense. But I just think from the Commonwealth aspect and the whole journey of The Walking Dead, it was just very underwhelming. And I think where they went eventually at the very end, like that needs to be explored a lot more. I think there should be another story there and like eventually end it around there. But in terms of Dead City, I mean, I think that, it's going to be a really exciting show. I'm definitely really excited to see where the story is going to go here for season 2, because I do think that season 1 was really just set up for this entire world. And like, this is what, it's going to be like on the show now. And I think for season 2 is going to be so much better. And yeah, if Hershel Jr. and Rick ever met, I think that at this point, because he's going to be going through a lot of this stuff with Maggie, I think that by the time he meets Rick, it's not going to be anything, in terms of, I guess, it being a bad like meeting or something like that. I think things will go pretty good. I think that they'll get along pretty well. And Rick has a lot of stories to tell about, his father. I mean, literally, Rick is alive because of Glenn. So there's a lot of stuff there. And like, that's what I mean. I want to see more of that. Like, there's a lot of little reunions like that we just haven't really thought of, because everyone thinks of like Rick and Daryl or like Rick and Negan. And like, what would that be like? But imagine actually having all the characters together. And then you have a scene of like Rick and Hershel talking, and Rick, tells a story of when his father saved him, and just like all the stories of Glenn, like there's so much. Like it would be just insane for Rick to see Hershel. Like there's a lot of stuff like that that's the proper ending to The Walking Dead, in my opinion. It's not what we got on The Ones Who Live. It's not any of that. Like it's sort of all the characters that, will survive, like them being a lot older and looking at the next generation and being like, we did it. We actually survived. Like we actually like we made it, like there was this really insane moment and it was just really hard to get through. And eventually we actually made it through, and a lot of people didn't, but like we are the ones who live kind of thing. And I get it. I know the show's called that, so maybe this would be a season 2 or 3 of that show. But like at the end though, just seeing Hershel grown up and Judith and RJ and like everybody else, basically seeing the next generation, and just like they're surviving now because they're grown up, and it's like they did what they could. They survived, and now it's up to them to survive. But I think that that's really one of the best endings you could have for The Walking Dead. So that's why I think that there is a bigger story to tell here. Like there is still an overall story in terms of all of the reunions and everything. And I think that's why there's so much interest in The Walking Dead still. Like I think if they actually told all that, everyone would be really happy with that ending. And I do see it happening in the next 5 to 10 years. I do think we're going to get that. Like 10 years from now, is The Walking Dead still going to be going on? Probably, but I don't think it's going to be with the characters that we have now. I think it's going to be a whole new, story, all new characters. And I think that, we have another 5-6 years here, I think, with these characters. And then I think that's where all this is going to end. Q&A, do you think Ash and Laurent will return to Daryl Dixon season 3 or 4 with Rick? See, I think that we will see those characters again for sure, but they're not returning with Rick. I just don't know how they're going to return. I think that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out in terms of all of that. Like, in terms of a Rick and Michonne spinoff or a season 2 of The Ones Who Live, like, there's been all these rumors, like everyone seems to be very open to doing a season 2 or doing a new story anyways, whether that's a season 2 or a new series, who knows? But I feel like it makes sense now for Laurent to be there. Like, one of the things that I don't want to happen is I don't want Laurent to just like show up in season 3 and be like, we couldn't go all the way there. We have to turn around and come back. Like, I think that would be really disappointing. I don't think they're going to do that, though, because of sort of the time that it took, and they all went to, like, now they're all in Spain, right? Like, there would be no way that, Laurent and Ash could find out that they're in Spain. Like, there's just a lot of stuff there that I'm like, I don't know. I think that it makes sense that they went there, because I think that's how Rick and everyone else finds out where Daryl and Carol are, right? So, yeah, in terms of Ash and Laurent returning, I think that eventually they will, but I think first they will go to the Commonwealth, and we'll see how that goes, I guess. Q&A, in your opinion, will Negan name the bat Lucille again? He apologized to his deceased wife for naming a bat after her in The Walking Dead season 10 episode 22. I'd like him to call it Maggie. I mean, I think that, I don't know if he will call the bat really anything. I think that's one of the things that I'm really interested in terms of the character's overall I guess just like the way he views all of that now, because going back to a lot of that, obviously, like I think the character is far past that. And I think a lot of people would have issues with that because the character has, you know, changed a lot over the years, but people do like that version of the character. So I think you do have to go back to that in some way because it is the funnest part about the character. I think that's why he's so popular. In terms of naming the bat Lucille, I don't think he ever will, but I could see other characters calling the bat Lucille. Like, I could see how maybe, you know, everyone else is pretending it's the same bat. And a lot of that, like, I could see how that makes sense. But I think the character specifically naming the bat again, I don't see it happening this season. I think that he's kind of past that. But Q&A, do you think Rick and Michonne can do cameos since Laurent went to the Commonwealth and he probably knows Daryl and Carol are in France and possibly does a cameo on Dead City first, showing up with the CRM, and then for the final season of the Daryl Dixon spinoff, he goes to look for Daryl and Carol with Michonne, CRM, and Laurent. I don't think it's going to be like that. I mean, I think that maybe it can happen. I just feel like I go back and forth in this a lot, but I really feel like if Rick and Michonne are going to do a new story, it's going to be their own show. Like, I just can't see them showing up in like those spinoffs. Like to have a Rick and Daryl reunion and to have it in the Daryl Dixon spinoff, I just don't know if that's something that even Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrero would want. You know, like I don't know if they would want to just show up in like a cameo scene there. I think if they want to do something in terms of that reunion and telling a bigger story there, they're going to want to tell, you know, a really big story there and do like, you know, a season 2 or like a new series type of thing. So that's why I don't really see that happening. And I mean, honestly, I don't know what was filmed the other day, like a week ago or whenever that was. Like there was something that was happening and it's been very, very quiet. I don't know what happened there. You know, honestly, we might not ever know until Dead City airs and then we watch the post-credit scene and then it's something announcing a new series. Like to me, I think that's sort of where we're at right now. We're just going to have to wait and see where this goes. But I do think that a new series makes way more sense for Rick and Michonne, or like a season 2 of The Ones Who Live, than cameos, because I think that them doing cameos in any of the spinoffs right now, it's just, it would have to be like the last couple of episodes or something, or the last season of those shows, because the second they leave, like the next season's not going to be as exciting because those characters are gone, right? So I don't know, that's kind of how I view it. But anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.